Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Sunday Night Live with me, Jonny Lipsham, here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk and the Midlothian area of southeast Scotland, which of course is the capital of pretty much every place that there is. There you go. I think I can summarize it like that nowadays, but there we go. Welcome everybody, and yes, I got the intro nice and slick this week, unlike last week where I kind of didn't, because OBS basically just froze on me and would not respond to anything. I don't know why, but anyway, it's all sorted now and everything's good. So I have no idea what was happening last week, but it's okay this week. So anyway, welcome everybody. Hope everybody is doing well. I hope everybody has had a good few days since we did Songwriting Simplified on Wednesday. We are very, very close to the finale show of the Halloween songwriting contest. So your entries need to be in for that on the 27th of October. And the way you do that is you go to the web address at the bottom of the screen, just type that into your URL and then click on Contact Us, fill out the form, put 2023 Halloween's contest as your subject, and then in the body of your text put your link to where your song has been uploaded to. So you need to publish this, folks. Okay, you need to put it up there so that people can see it and people can comment on it, because that's kind of important. The whole, as much as this is about winning a prize, it's also about completing a body of work and getting that out into the public domain. That's kind of what this was all about, essentially, as well as having a kind of composing element, a composing challenge element to it. The whole point of it really was to facilitate you guys having a brief, having a deadline by which to have that brief complete, have your work complete according to that brief, and publishing the thing. So that's the biggest part. Get it published. SoundCloud is a great place to do it, and you can create a free SoundCloud account, or Bandcamp is another place you can put it, or if you're being really creative and you've made a little music video to go with it, that's not part of the challenge, by the way. It's not part of the requirements, but if you want to be extra creative, you can do, but there are no bonus points for doing that. But if you do put it up onto YouTube, that's fine. We just need the link for that. So we need links for where your song is, and we need them by the 27th, and then Rich and I will spend a period on Saturday that we're going to agree to, where we will go through all of the entries, and we'll decide which ones are in our playlist for the Sunday Night Live show, which we are going to be doing together next week. And and as well as that, we will choose the winner. So we're going to pick basically what we think are, basically the top 5 or top 10 best entries, depending upon how many there are. At the moment, we have 13 or 14 entries, which is very, very cool. If we get a wee flurry before the 27th or on the 27th, and we end up with like 20 or more entries, then obviously the more entries we get, the more we'll have to choose from to pick like a top 5 or something like that. And of course, we will have a winner. Rich is going to play his piece. I'm going to play mine. Mine is all finished, and I'm very pleased with it. It's very, very tempting to kind of sneak peek it out there for you guys, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to do it. I have not listened to any of the entries yet, and I'm not going to until I have that meeting with Rich where we go through them all. So that's just how it's going to work, and so I'm not going to put mine out there until Friday the 27th. I'm not going to put mine out there until Friday the 27th, but I will publish it because that's part of it. So I will put mine up on my SoundCloud, and then everybody will get to hear it. So that'll be fun. So that's how that is going to work. If you forgot to put a subject to the email, don't worry about it, Bobby. It's fine. As long as it says somewhere what it is for. Because I do get quite a lot of emails. So I kind of do need to know what's what. But so long as it says somewhere, hey, this is the songwriting challenge thing, then that's cool. As I said, this challenge is sponsored by the generosity of Rich Cresswell. And he set the brief for the challenge. He basically took my idea and he ran with it. And he created the brief for the ideas. So we're using the Locrian Natural 6 scale. And the idea is to scare us or do something that is dark and foreboding and those kind of things. And do something, even if that means you have to step outside your comfort zone, which I have definitely done with mine, by the way. I have stepped outside of my comfort zone to do mine. And we kind of said we give some leeway. We'd say, hey, you can step outside of the Locrian Natural 6 scale if you want to provide some contrast, because it is a bit of a weird sounding scale. And it kind of, it is quite limiting, actually. But I decided I'm going to stick, hitting the mic. I'm going to stick 100% to that scale, which is what I did. I basically set myself an extra challenge, which is basically I'm only going to use that scale to derive harmony and melody. And what I ended up with, I'm really pleased with, and I'm very excited about it. So it's going to be cool. I'm looking forward to y'all being able to hear it, and I'm looking forward to hearing all of your entries too, because I know some of you, some of you that have submitted entries, writing music is not your thing. It's not what you do. You are a mastering engineer, you're a mix engineer, or you're a producer, but you're not writing music. You're not creating your own original works. That's just not what you do. And so some folks among the submissions have done that. And that is really stepping outside of their comfort zone, because they've never done something like this before. So to those people, there is extra kudos for taking the plunge and diving in deep to do something they've never done before. So I'm tremendously excited to find out what you all have submitted. So yeah, it's going to be very, very cool. And if this challenge is successful, which hopefully it will be, then there will be other challenges. Some of those challenges will not have a prize. Some of them will. I'm fairly confident that we will do another challenge at some point that does actually have a prize attached to it, but there will be other challenges that are just for fun. Just enter for the sheer fun of it, and just to challenge yourself to do something you've not done before. So we are going to put those out over the course of the remainder of this year and next year. Next year is going to be big, folks. 2024 is going to be big in terms of creative challenges and that kind of thing. I have some big ideas, and I'm going to be talking with some other collaborators, including Rich, by which we can work out some of those challenges. It's going to be, next year is going to be absolutely awesome. So please stick around. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure that you have the notification bell set to all notifications so that you don't miss anything, because next year is going to be amazing. It really is. I am so excited by 2024. And it's not normal that I plan this far ahead, but you know what? I've got so carried away with how challenges like this one are going that I thought, heck, why not just start mapping out all of 2024? So that's what I've done. And it's going to be awesome. It really is. There's going to be some amazing videos that I have planned, and I'm already kind of drawing up scripts. I don't normally script my videos, but some of these are so important. I want to make sure I get them right. So they will, if they're not kind of literally word for word scripted, they're certainly going to have notes for me to follow, because they are so important. I want to get them right. So there's a lot of high quality content coming your way from this channel in 2024. So please stay tuned. Invite all of your friends and your family and your friends and family's tennis partners and your friends and family's tennis partners, families and wives and children and stepchildren and tortoises, because this is important. Why tortoises came to my mind, I don't know. Anyway, somebody just clicked on that little heart button, which is very cool. I don't know when they added that to YouTube, but if you feel like hitting the heart button because it's there to be clicked on, then please do. Note that you'll find there's a whole bunch of other emojis that are in that heart button as well, and you can just select whichever one you like and spam it. Have fun with it, because it looks like a fun toy. There we go. We have a few more. All right, so let's go see who is here. And we have Billy Morgan was the first in the door. And Christina was in, I think, pretty much second. And Christopher, you are hilarious, my friend. You are one of the funniest people I know. I have to read this in full because it is so good. He says, crap. And then he says, I kept clicking the refresh button for the last 2 hours. I get up to go take a dump, and sure as heck, Billy gets there first. Figures. When I read that, because I've had to chat scrolling since I set up the show, and when I first read that, yep, I definitely lulled, and I might have ruffled down there somewhere, because it was very, very funny. Yes, that's Chris. And we've got Paul Morgan, we've got Stephen Wilson here, we've got Rock Tees down the other side of the planet, who has a question which we're going to get to. And we got Kyle Trajuziak, we got Ron Figura, we got Keith from Radio Tuck Frumpets, my favorite radio station. And we've got, speaking of whom, we've got Rich Cresswell here. And we got John Lake, we got Don Oliver, we've got Bobby Booth, we got Gardner99, and I'm pretty sure I've missed somebody actually that I saw earlier, and I think I've skated over you. There you go, Daryl Harrison is here as well, and I missed you out, sorry about that, Daryl. And we got Just Bob here as well, which is awesome. He's apologized for being late. Well, Bob, I know you kind of work when I'm doing my show, so I appreciate you popping in. It's very, very cool. Thank you for that. I came in late. You have surpassed 13 entries. Yes, we have surpassed 13 entries. I'm very excited by that. And we've got Alps Media LLC, my dear friend Louis, who sponsors Songwriting Simplified and Sunday Night Live. And I appreciate all of his help and his kindness and his generosity and his support, because this channel has grown a lot. It's grown very significantly since my partnership with Louis, and it's very, very cool. And we are well on the way to 6,000 subscribers. My goal, my kind of short-term goal, is to get to 6,000. There will be some kind of giveaway that we do for 6,000 subscribers. And then my medium-term goal is to get to 10,000 subscribers, and we will do something spectacular for 10,000 subscribers. Because that's kind of a big landmark to get to, because, we go from 4 figures to 5 figures. So that's a big goal to get to. And we'll do something very spectacular for that, for which I will work with Louis and with others as well to really make that something spectacular. So please help by getting the word out there about this channel and the content on this channel and the Wednesday and Sunday night shows. I would appreciate that a lot. The quicker we can get to 10,000, the better. And then, of course, beyond that, we are reaching for 100,000 subscribers, which is when you get the first plaque. So that's kind of where I'm headed. I have big plans and aspirations for this channel. And you guys are in kind of some of you have been here since the start, man, since like 2014, 2015. Some of you have been here right from the very start. So you guys are founding members of this channel's community, and I appreciate you more than words can express. The fact that you stuck with me when everything was a wee bit, you know, kind of low budget, let's just say, where the computer was very weak and my bandwidth and my internet was really, really poor, which meant, you know, live streaming was kind of, well, let's just say it looked like I was transmitting from Mars or something, because it was very pixelated and sound quality was terrible. But you stuck with me, and here we are with much better internet, with better lighting, and everything looks and sounds fantastic. And that's down to you guys. That's down to you guys, and it's down to your support for me and what I do that has meant I've been able to invest in, and also the fact that I've moved and we now own this house, which means this is going to be the studio for the foreseeable future, and we have great internet. So what's not to like, really? All right, so I'm kind of waffling a wee bit now. We got 26 people here, which is amazeballs. Or at least we did have 26. But yeah, we're down to like 22 now. But that's okay. Please hit that like button. Let's see if we can get likes for viewers like we like to do. So that would help me out a lot if you guys do that. And Alps Media is being very nice to me. Thank you very much, mate. I appreciate all you've done. All right, so let's get to questions about Studio One, which is what this channel does primarily, but especially what this show does. So if you have Studio One questions, recording, mixing, mastering, performing, Dolby Atmos, new features, all that kind of stuff, get those in the chat just now. I would appreciate that a lot, because that kind of makes the show kind of work. We've got one question already from Rock Tees down under, and we're going to get to his question first because he was the first one with the question. And he says, as far as you know, is Studio One now more resource hungry? He says RAM hungry, but I'm going to kind of lump in CPU with that as well, with 6.5 than it was with 6.2. Even if you don't choose to use Atmos. Getting crashes now that I never used to get. Okay. Now, as you folks are probably extremely well aware, I work for Presonus. And I work with the software development team very, very closely. I'm involved with technical support and also with quality assurance. So the places that, the parts of Studio One that I am most focused on for my job is the score editor and all that goes with that, and the Studio One Notion interoperability. But there's a lot that I'm involved in with Studio One. And I meet regularly with the development team and with the product managers for both Notion and Studio One. I meet with them every week, and we have one big meeting every month, and I'm involved in all of that. So, but I've been involved with Studio One in terms of beta testing since 2017, since Studio One 3.5 was when I joined the beta team. And I'll be really, really honest, and I'm not speaking as a Presonus employee here. I'm speaking as me, okay? But what I'll say is this. I think over the last 8 years, I'm going to say, the last 8 years, I think the development team have worked extremely hard, not only on developing new features, but also developing the kind of features that you guys want, that you guys make in feature requests over at answers.presonus.com. And one of the highest feature requests that we have ever had in our entire history is better multi-threading and multi-core support for Studio One, and better resource management overall for Studio One. And we have done a lot to basically streamline how the audio engine and how the MIDI engines work with your CPU and with your RAM. So we've done a lot under the hood that you don't see in the release notes to improve that kind of thing. Now, specifically getting to the difference between 6.5 and 6.2. One of the things you may notice, if you are getting Studio One crashing to desktop now, which by that I mean it disappears from the screen and it basically shuts itself off. If you're seeing that in Studio One 6.5, where you were not seeing that in Studio One 6.2, the most likely culprit. Now, you're going to say, oh, they all say this. They all say this. They all blame other people. They don't really take a look at their own stuff, which would not be true, actually. That would not be true. But I will tell you this, 95% of crashes you see with Studio One are to do with third-party plugins or third-party virtual instruments. For example, I will give you a really good example. In fact, I'm going to give you an example of a plugin and a virtual instrument. The plugin that at the moment we see the most crashes in Studio One with is SonarWorks Sound ID. So if you're using that, that is very, very likely to be causing crashes in Studio One. We see a lot of that. And the virtual instrument, Sample Tank 4. Those are the two that I personally have seen crashing Studio One the most. So here's what happens. When a plugin or a virtual instrument crashes, it takes the host DAW down with it. And this is not just a Studio One thing. This happens in most DAWs, because most DAWs do not have like a sandbox or something like that, where if the plugin crashes, it stays kind of isolated and the DAW can continue to work. And you just get some kind of indication that says, hey, this plugin has crashed. You need to restart Studio One, or whatever DAW it is. Studio One does not have that feature. Most DAWs don't either. Pro Tools doesn't, Logic doesn't, Cubase doesn't, Nuendo doesn't. I don't know about Reaper because I've never used Reaper, probably never will. And Ableton Live, I definitely know doesn't either. So this is a feature that is not prevalent amongst DAWs, and there's probably a very, very good developmental reason why they don't do it. So, okay, Logic has sandboxing. Okay, that I've not used Logic in a long time, so that might be something that's reasonably new then. But yeah, I did say most DAWs. I didn't say all. I said most DAWs don't have sandboxing. Some do, some don't, because it's very hard to implement. Okay, there you go. Logic has sandboxing just lately. Okay, so that's a pretty new thing for Logic. Okay, that's exciting that they have that, because if they have that, then it means that it's more likely that it will spread to other DAWs. It happens like that. Somebody pioneers something, like Presonus and Ceremony got together in 2013, and they developed ARA, which meant that you could have Ceremony's Melodyne integrated directly inside of Studio One. And, you know, we created an SDK for it. And we said, here, it's free. Grab it, plugin developers, grab it. You can have this. And you can make your plugins do exactly the same thing as Melodyne. And a whole bunch of host DAWs basically went, yeah, we'll have that. We'll implement ARA into our DAW as well. And now most DAWs have this. It was created by Presonus with Ceremony. So, you know, this is kind of how software development in the music industry works. Somebody pioneers something, and then, you know, that area, that gets kind of shared around. Now, you know, Presonus makes ARA freely available. You can just go and download the SDK. It's that easy. You just go and download it and you start developing your plugins to support it. So, you know, but, you know, that's kind of another subject. So getting back to the problem, Rock says, it seems to be RAM-hungry plugins that use to cope, but if Studio One requires more now, it may be my issue. It depends upon how much RAM you've got. I mean, I've got a machine here that's got 16 gigs of RAM. Doesn't have a lot by today's standards. Most bare bones basic systems for music production, like if you buy from somewhere like scancomputers.co.uk, which is where I get all of my computers, by the way, and if you're in the UK, I thoroughly recommend them. But most of and I've checked this on scancomputers.co.uk, and their bare bones basic systems now, they have 32 gigs of RAM. Because that's just the new norm. That's the new kind of bare bones basic. So, I mean, I've got 16 gigs of RAM. And I can tell you this, I've been through several computers in the last 10 years. And in those 10 years, I think I've seen Studio One crash maybe 3 times, maybe 4. And I can tell you right now that of those 4 crashes, 3 of them were caused by third-party plugins, and the 4th one was caused by me. It was totally user error. So, you know, but yeah, I'm aware that, you know, people have more crashes than that, than I do. I'm on a Windows system running Windows 10. I have run Windows 7 in the past, and Windows 10. I love Windows 10. I'm probably going to stay on Windows 10 until they cease support for it, and then I will move over to Windows 11. But I also have over here a Mac. This has a lot less RAM in it. It only has 8 gigs of RAM, and it's only a dual core processor. It's an i5 dual core processor. It does run Studio One, but it will bog down because it's only got 2 cores. So there are a couple of things to take into account when it comes to CPU. Number 1, how many cores do you have? Good number of cores is always a good thing. This machine I have here has 8 cores. Number 2, the speed of those cores. The faster, the better. You're going to pay more money for that, though. But if you've got, you know, 8 cores at least, and, you know, the speed of your cores is like 4 gigahertz, which is what mine are. Mine are 4.5 gigahertz. Then they're going to process data quite quickly, in fact, extremely quickly. And then that puts less stress on your RAM because your CPU doesn't then get overloaded and have to pass things over to RAM in order to process all of the data, which is what can happen. And then your RAM sticks can get overwhelmed. But here's the thing, if you start putting lots of plugins on a single channel, all of those plugins get processed in series on a single core. Now you're probably going to say something like, hey, isn't Studio One multi-core? Yes, it is. It does support multi-core CPUs. Absolutely it does. But this is how audio is processed in every DAW. Every single DAW. Every one of them processes audio the same way. If you have a lot of plugins on a single core, they are processed in series, on a single channel rather. They are processed in series on the core that they are first loaded up onto. Okay? So that means that when you see the performance meter going into the red in Studio One, and then you open Task Manager, and Task Manager looks like your computer is basically sleeping, then the thing is, these are showing two different data sets. And this is a common misunderstanding. They think, Task Manager is showing that my CPU is at barely 1%, but Studio One is in the red. Studio One must be broken. No, that's not how it works. What the performance meter is showing you is it's showing you only Studio One's load on the core that it is active on. That's it. It doesn't show you anything else. It doesn't show you any of the background processes that are taking place on your computer. It just shows that data. So if you've got a lot of plugins stacked on a channel, and those plugins require a lot of processing power, and some of them definitely do, some of them definitely require a lot of processing power, then all of that's going to get loaded up onto one core. And that core is going to get overloaded. And that's when you start to get audio dropouts. That's when Studio One starts to crash. Okay? And when you look at the crash report, it'll say that Studio One has crashed. It's Studio One that's caused the crash. But no, really, it's just the simple amount of plugins that you've loaded up on your core. And basically, your computer has gone, I'm having trouble handling all of this audio data that I need to process in real time with as low latency as possible. I'm going to pass off some of this to the RAM. RAM sticks may not be fast enough. And badum, it drops all the data. And that's when you get a crash. And that's in simple terms. But it's a good way. It's a good way to talk about these things so that everybody understands it. Bobby Booth says, I noticed that IK Multimedia and Softube are starting to use more CPU. Yes, they do. But to be fair to both of those manufacturers, those are actually, when I talked about plugins that require a lot more processing power, those are two manufacturers where their plugins just do. Okay, it doesn't matter what plugins they are. For the most part, they just require a lot more processing power. So if you've got a lot of those running in a session, then yeah, you're going to max out your available resources pretty quickly. So it's something that you need to bear in mind. So Rocktease says he's on 16 gigs of RAM. Yep, that's what I'm on. But here's the difference. He's on Windows 11 and he's got 4 cores. And you go, 16 gigs of RAM is really just a question of, do you know if the devs have made the door need more RAM? No, they haven't. But that said, as technology moves forward, software technology, such as a DAW, as it moves forward, you are going to need to keep up with that with your computer. So, a new version of Studio One may bog down on an older computer. So if you've got a computer that's maybe, 6 or 7 years old, and you are trying to run Studio One 6.5 on that computer, it may well bog down and it may well have more problems. Because an older computer is going to have not as much resources available, and it's not going to manage those resources as efficiently as a computer that's, brand new or a year or two old. I'm in a situation where I have a computer that I got in 2020, so it's only 3 years old. But as software technology development moves forward, so hardware development also moves forward, pretty much at the same pace. So I'm looking at the same price bracket for the computer I bought in 2020, and I'm looking at that on scancomputers.co.uk, and that computer, computer's in that price bracket now have 32 gigs of RAM and they have like more cores, more than 8. I'm just like, wow. Okay, so in 3 years, just 3 years, computer technology has moved on a lot. And so has software as well. So, you know, it stands to reason that the more features you add into a program, the more it's going to require more processing power to do what you want it to do, especially if you're going to use a lot of those features, such as something like Dolby Atmos. You have to remember here that a DAW is incredibly hardworking and intensive piece of software. Why? Because it processes audio data in real time. It does it in real time. And so in order to do that, and especially if you're trying to set up the Studio One settings, you know, all the processing settings, so that you are running with the lowest latency you can get, that means your computer has to work harder and it has to work faster. The trouble with working harder and working faster is there's more likely to drop things. Like if you try and carry a whole bunch of stuff from one room in your house to another, and somebody says, I want you to move all of that stuff from this room to this room in 3.5 seconds, and you have to do that, you have to move that stuff from this room to this room in 3.5 seconds, what are the chances you're going to drop something? Let's imagine that those things are plates, expensive plates, and you're moving them from the lounge to the dining room or into the kitchen. And you're being told you only have 3.5 seconds to move that stuff, to move all that stuff and put it back in the kitchen where it belongs, in all its proper places, in 3.5 seconds. What's the chances you're going to drop at least one plate, and one of those plates that gets dropped is going to get broken? Pretty high, right? So, you know, we are making more and more demands of our computers by the music that we want to make. And so software and hardware has to keep up with that. So this is where having a computer that is more than 3 years old is going to not work in your favor. And I know that this is expensive. You know, we're talking about buying new computers. We're talking about buying more RAM. We're talking about buying motherboards and things. But one of the things that my friend Rich Cresswell, he said to me just the other day on a Skype call, we were talking, and we were talking about building computers, and actually, if you know what you're doing, the most cost-effective way to keep your computer up to date is just to get a new motherboard and new RAM sticks, and just do that regularly. That way, you're not having to buy a brand new computer every time. And you're just basically swapping out old components for new ones. If you know what you're doing, that's a great option. If you're like me and you don't know what you're doing, because I'm not a computer person, I'm not a computer expert, I don't really know much about what goes on inside of a computer. As far as I'm concerned, a computer is a tool to get a job done. And that's it. I've learned more about computers in the last 5 years than I had in the previous 35 years because of the nature of my job. I've had to learn more. But yeah, that's kind of my point. So that was a long answer to that question. But it's a good subject, and I think it's an important subject that you've raised there. Let's see what else there is. And there's some other good things here. Bobby Booth says put your plugins in nap mode. Yes, Studio One, I think from about 5.2, I think it was, has plugin nap. What does that mean? It means when the plugin is not being used, it goes to sleep, and no audio passes through that plugin, and therefore no processing is required of that plugin. So that's another way to help kind of make things a little bit more lean on your computer and a little bit less hard work. And Dave actually says there may be some stuff running hogging the CPU. One thing I wish was available in Studio One was delegation of resources as to allotting VSTs to a different core. such as an 8-core system. Well, you know what? It does that already. That's what I'm saying. It already does that. But bear in mind, if you start stacking things onto a single channel, all of that is processed on the one core that it is active on. Okay? And those are done in series. So if you have a whole bunch of VSTIs on different channels, that's fine. The load of those will all get spread across all of your cores. Okay? So if you've got Sign Player and you've got, I don't know, Contact, and you've got like 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, maybe 50 instances of Contact. And I know people that do this because of the way they work. All of those are loaded across your cores. That's a fact. Studio One has done that for years. It has always been multi-core supported. And so there's a lot of bad information that is out there about Studio One not being multi-core supported. It is. The reason why people don't see that is because they stuff 15 plugins on their vocal channel. And really, from a mix engineer point of view, not from the CPU and RAM point of view, but from the mix engineer point of view, really, if you have to stuff 15 plugins on a vocal channel, I wonder really why you're doing that. And are you not just over-processing the vocal? Strip all of that away, use a single EQ and a single compressor, and put a reverb and a delay, or a couple of delays on sends. And that's it. That's all you need. You don't need, 20 channel strips on a vocal channel. You don't. You don't need, like, 5 EQs and 10 compressors. You don't. And if you're doing that because, let's say, and I've been there, I've done this the hard way, where I've had a vocal and I've put a Pro EQ on there. You get 5 bands of EQ on Pro EQ, right? And I've been there and I've done this, where, I'm using all 5 bands, but I'm still hearing something that doesn't quite sound right. So I drag in another Pro EQ. And I start finding those things that I was hearing and start notching those out. Now I've used 10 bands of EQ. And then I go and compress that. And then I'll go compress that with, so I'll maybe do fast attack compression and then a more smooth butter kind of style compressor, like an optical compressor after that. And let's say I then go, well, you know what, even after the 2 compressors, I'm still hearing something that's not right about this vocal. And so I'll go and grab another EQ, and I'll maybe a Neve EQ or maybe a Pultec EQ this time, and I'll start doing that, that nice boost and attenuation thing at the same frequency band that you can do on a Pultec, the Pultec trick. And I'll do that, and I'll go, yeah, that's all great, but it needs compressed again. So I'll run a limiter through it. See what I've done? I've now got 11 plugins on that one vocal. And now it's starting to sound like it distorts. And now I'm seeing that performance meter starting to peg. Because everything's being done on that one core. And I'm making that one core do all the work in real time with the lowest possible latency settings that you can get. That's not going to work. And that's not good. That's not good mix engineering. Take all the plugins off, start again, do some broader brush strokes with the EQ and some broad brush strokes with a nice soft optical compressor, and then, do some fast attack compression if you need to. Maybe put a limiter on afterwards if you really, really need to. But that's it. You don't really need much more than that. So yeah, Dave, Studio One does support multi-core. Always has done. Let's see, what else do we have here? And you guys are all talking about Mac Minis and all sorts of other computers. Yeah, Mac or PC, doesn't really matter. You can make great music and get great mixes done with either or. And Starlight G Recording is here. Hello, mate. Good to see you. I'm glad you're here. He says only 5 plugins total on my computer, and if I want to use more plugins, that's when I use outboard gear like an 1176 compressor, an EQ, and I use aux sends. Yep, if you've got that gear, use it. If you have external hardware EQs and hardware compressors and limiters, use them. Because that means the audio's not being processed at all on your computer. And that is the best way to do it. Or, even better, here's another really good way to sculpt your sound. Do it when you're recording. You know, EQ your vocal and compress your vocal on the way in. Print that to the track. There, that's my vocal sound. Done. It's not being processed on my computer anymore. Same thing. You know, if you're still using plugins and you're not, you know, recording through plugins or recording through external gear on the way in because you don't want to work that way, once you're happy with the sound of your vocal, with your EQ and your compressors, and you really like how it sounds, even if you're using some heavy-hitting plugins, render it. Commit to the sound. Render that thing. And then it's no more being processed by your computer. It's not being processed by your computer anymore because you've printed it. I print all the time. Once I'm happy with something, I print it. It's done. And then I end up with you know, you look at my console and there's either a handful of plugins across the whole mix or there's none because I've printed them all. Because I've gone, yeah, I like how that sounds. That's exactly how I want that vocal to sound. That's exactly how I want that guitar to sound. Print. Transform to rendered audio. Done. All of those plugins get unloaded. Done. And, you know, I've got resources back. And it's a good way to work. Even if you've got a really, really fast computer. Even if you've got, you know, 2,000 cores. Even if you've got, you know, 500 gigawatts or, you know, 500 megatons of RAM. Who cares? Print. Make life easy for yourself. Commit to your sound. I know it sounds old school, and maybe that's because, you know, that's where I got my start in music production and in mixing. You know, I learned on an SSL-E console. You know, the old SSL 4000E. That's where I started. I started with those faders and those, you know, those lovely channel strips. There was no computer screen to stare at. I had to use nothing but my ears and that console and the tape machine. That was it. That was how I worked. That's how I learned how to work. And so I learned how to commit to a sound. I learned how to print through, you know, I learned, you know, how to print an 1176 a vocal through an 1176 compressor or a Pultec EQ or a Neve EQ because we had all of that outboard gear and it all just got printed to the track. And then on the mixing channel, I just did a little bit of last minute EQ, a little bit of fine EQ, and that was it. And a little bit of fine compression. That was it. And all of that gets printed. Treat your DAW in the same way. Commit to the sound. But that's a whole nother subject. Okay, Dave has a question. He says it's a dumb question, which of course there is no such thing. Running 8 tracks is perfect for 8 core, and 16 tracks are even better with 16 cores. That's not how it works. You can run on an 8 core machine, which is like what I have. I can run up to 500 tracks of audio. I've done it. And the computer really doesn't start breaking a sweat. It's not the audio, it's what you do to the audio that is the issue here. So if I have 500 channels of audio in the mixer, 500 tracks of audio in the Arranger view, and let's say I only use one EQ and one compressor on buses for each of those, which is, by the way, how I work. I don't necessarily put plugins on each individual channel. I put plugins on the buses. I group everything into buses. So if I'm working with an orchestra, I've got first violins, that's a bus. Second violins, that's a bus. And then I have a nested bus for violins. And then I have violas 1, violas 2, their buses. And then I have a nested bus for violas. And then same with cellos. And then same with flutes, same with oboes, same with clarinets, and then we start getting into trumpets, trombones, tubas, French horns. Because there are so many different groups for brass, I'll have a bus for each of those brass groups, and then I'll have an overall nested bus for brass. I do all my mixing on those nested buses first, and then I move on to the individual buses for each group of the orchestra, and then I will deal with individual channels if they need it. If they don't need it, if everything sounds great after I've done all the processing on the buses, we're done. And I don't need to do anything else. And that means that I'm using my CPU extremely efficiently. Because I'm doing all of my processing on those bus channels, and I'm not doing all my processing on the individual channels. And I certainly don't stack up loads of plugins. I try and use as few plugins as I can get away with. If I can get away with one EQ and one compressor across the whole mix, then that's what I do. And it means I never max out anything. I have never maxed out Studio One. I've never had the performance meter go into the red. I have never had the clip light up. Because I have learned over years of using Cubase before I got into Studio One 10 years ago. Just learning how to do things efficiently. And so here we are. But that's some great questions. Ollie says, I think the new Studio One toolbox comes out tomorrow. It might do that. It's possible. I'm going to go up and make sure I've not missed any questions. And it doesn't look like it. I think I've got everything so far. Rock was saying, nothing changed here apart from the update. It seems to be RAM-hungry plugins that used to cope, but it was Studio One. Okay, yeah, we got that. Ollie says, so they got sandboxing. He's talking about Logic here. But it broke Logic's ARA. They lost ARA in the process. One could argue ARA is more important than sandboxing if you deal with a lot of vocals. Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And I think that is a shame. And I hope that enough Logic folks, badger their tech support about that that then gets filtered back to their dev team and they do something about that. Because I think that's a great shame. All right, we have 1 minute left, which is not really enough time to deal with anything else. But really, I think I've kind of preached this message very, very strongly. And as some of you will realize, I have an educational background. For those of you who don't know, I'm a qualified educator at high school level and at university, undergraduate and postgraduate degree level. So I have taught at a high school, I have taught at university, I have taught undergraduate and postgrad students, and I have taught, first grader high school kids, people that they've just arrived at high school for the first time. So I've done a lot of teaching, but I also preach at my church on occasional Sundays as well. So I'm pretty good at this kind of talking until the cows come home business. So if any of you want me to shut up, then I'll shut up. Because it is now 1 a.m. So we have reached time. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. Thank you, Rock, for the great question that sparked off a whole lot of discussion about computers, computer processing, plugins, and managing your mix better and more efficiently. And I hope that some of the things I've had to share tonight are going to help you be more efficient about how you use your computers and about how you use your DAW, how you use Studio One. And certainly, I'm a big advocate of committing to the sound. You don't have to do that. It's just a suggestion that may help you get better results and, not make your computer sweat quite so much. So we're done for the night. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. And we will be back here on Wednesday for Songwriting Simplified. It is going to be the last Songwriting Simplified before the Halloween show, which will be on next Sunday with my special guest, Rich Cresswell. And we will be going through your Halloween songs. And we'll be going through mine and his as well. So it's going to be really, really cool. And we're going to announce the winner. And when we announce that winner, get in touch with Rich. Rich will make clear how to get in touch with him so that you can select and gain your prize for winning. And for those of you that don't win, you know what? Getting music made, getting music out there, even if you're just a mix engineer and you're not a composer, you're not a songwriter, you're not an arranger, that's kind of not your bag. You're like Bobby Booth, you're just a mix engineer and you love to mix. You love to mix and you could mix in your sleep. You love it that much. Get your mixes out there. Get your mixes out there to the public so that they can enjoy your skill set. If you're a songwriter, get your songs out there so that people can hear what you have to say. If you're a composer, get your music, your melodies, your orchestrations, whatever genre you're working in, get that music out there to the public so that they can hear your skills in action and they can check out what you do and what you're good at. Even if you don't win. Winning's not important. Taking part is important. And I know it sounds like a crass wee saying, and it maybe is, but taking part, I think, means more than winning. Winning is great. I like to win. I'm okay with losing, but participating is the important thing. Chris says, how are we going to hear everybody's mixes? You guys have sent me, those of you that have submitted so far, you have sent me your submissions. We will play them. And we will talk about where people's mixes are located as well, so that you can go and check them out for yourselves. Okay, we will post up the links to each person's mix as we play them. We're not going to play all of them, but we will post links up for everybody to go and get access to. What we're going to do is Rich and I are going to create a Google Docs sheet that we will use to basically go and locate everybody's works, and we will listen to every entry. And we will pick our favorite ones, and the favorite ones will be the ones that we play live on the show, but we will grant everybody access to the Google Docs so that they can go and check out those entries as well. So that's how we'll do it. We'll put a link to the Google Doc with all of the links to everybody's entries on that Google Doc, and you can go and listen to everybody's entries. So that's how we're going to do it. All right, folks. There will be an after show. I will be there for a brief period. I've got a few things to do before I hit the hay, but I'll be there for a wee bit. Billy's posted the link to that. So I will see you on Wednesday for Songwriting Simplified. And until then, folks, have yourselves a great night and a great rest of your weekend. Good night.